I found footprints at 14,000 feet where nobody could possibly have survived long enough to make them. Not near a trail. Not near a shelter. Right at the edge of a ridge that drops 1,000 feet straight down, in snow that had fallen only hours before. Two sets, walking side by side, and then, without warning, only one set continued. I've climbed for 11 years. I know what frostbite looks like, what altitude does to the mind, how easy it is to convince yourself you saw something that wasn't there. I keep telling myself that's all this was. I don't fully believe it anymore. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that 3 of us went up Korvasi Peak in early December, and only 2 of us came down, and the official report says something happened up there that I know, for a fact, did not happen the way it was written. I want to walk you through it exactly as it happened, in order, because I think the order is the only thing that still makes sense to me. Everything else about that mountain, I've stopped trying to explain. Korvasi Peak isn't famous. That was part of the appeal. My climbing partner Denny had read about it in an old mountaineering forum, a technical route with a fire lookout near the summit that had been abandoned since the 1970s, decommissioned after the Forest Service pulled staff off it for reasons nobody online seemed to agree on. Some thread said budget cuts. One said a lookout had gone missing and they never replaced him. Denny thought that made it more interesting. I should have taken it as a warning instead. We brought a third climber, a woman named Priya who'd summited with Denny twice before. She was methodical, careful, the kind of climber who double-checked everyone's gear without being asked. That mattered to me. I trusted her judgment more than my own on unfamiliar terrain. We packed for a 3-day round trip. Snowshoes, an ice axe each, crampons, a GPS unit, a satellite radio in case cell service failed, which it always does above 10,000 feet. We had a paper map as backup, because Denny didn't trust electronics completely, and a lightweight 2-person tent plus a bivy sack for the third. Emergency shelter was already marked on our route, an old ranger cabin at 11,000 feet where climbers were supposed to be able to shelter if the weather turned. The forecast called for clear skies with a storm system arriving 2 days later, well after we planned to be off the mountain. We checked it 3 times before leaving the trailhead. I remember Priya double-checking the satellite radio batteries and saying, half joking, nobody's coming to save us up there if this thing dies. None of us laughed, not really. We just kept packing. The trailhead itself sat empty except for our truck. No other cars. No other climbers signed into the trail register that week. Denny wrote our names anyway, out of habit, and I remember thinking how strange it looked, 3 names on an otherwise blank page going back almost a month. Before we started up, an older man in a Forest Service jacket pulled up in a battered pickup and watched us load our packs for a minute before saying anything. He asked if we were headed for Korvasi. When we said yes, he just nodded slowly and said, "Stay together. All the way up, all the way down. Doesn't matter how tired you get." Denny laughed and said we always did. The man didn't laugh back. He just got in his truck and drove off before we could ask what he meant. The first day went exactly the way a normal climb should go. We made good time on the lower switchbacks, the snow firm enough to hold our weight without snowshoes for the first few miles. Around noon, the trail narrowed into thicker forest, dead quiet except for our own breathing and the occasional crack of a branch under fresh snow load. That's when Priya stopped and pointed at a set of footprints crossing our path. Boot prints, deep and fresh, heading perpendicular to our route, toward a section of forest that wasn't on any trail. Another climber, Denny said, barely glancing at them. Probably off trail, taking a shortcut to the ridge. It made sense. People did that all the time on unofficial routes. We kept walking. An hour later, the wind picked up, and with it came a strange, thin whistling sound that seemed to shift direction independent of the wind itself. Denny said it was just air moving through rock formations higher up, a known effect on certain peaks. I'd heard of that too, so I accepted it. Our GPS started drifting that afternoon, showing our position nearly 200 yards off from where we clearly stood, based on visible landmarks. Denny blamed satellite lag from tree cover. We checked the paper map instead and kept going. Not long after, Priya noticed the trail markers we were following, small orange ribbons tied to branches at intervals, had started appearing in places that made no sense with the map, doubling back on themselves, one tied to a branch that hung directly over open air at the edge of a drop. Denny guessed a previous crew must have remarked the route and never updated the records. It was possible. Everything was possible that first day. That was the problem. By late afternoon, we reached the old ranger cabin, the one marked as an emergency shelter on our map. According to every source Denny had found, it had been locked and unused for years. The door was open. Not broken open. Just unlatched, swinging slightly in the wind, snow drifted across the threshold in a way that suggested it had been open for a while, but with no footprints leading in or out. Inside, everything looked untouched. Dusty shelves, an old wood stove, a logbook on the table with entries going back decades. The last entry, dated only 3 weeks earlier, in handwriting that grew shakier line by line, read simply, "The second set of tracks isn't ours." We didn't understand what that meant yet. We should have turned back right there. Instead, Priya suggested we press on to make the summit before dark, since we still had daylight and clear weather. Denny agreed. I went along with it, mostly because neither of them seemed worried, and I didn't want to be the one who called off the trip over a strange sentence in an old notebook. That decision changed everything that followed. By the second day, I couldn't explain things away the way we had been. We woke to find our tents rainfly coated in frost in a pattern that looked, unmistakably, like a handprint pressed from the outside. Denny said condensation does strange things in cold air, forming shapes that look intentional but aren't. I wanted to believe him. Almost did. An hour into our climb, Priya went quiet and pointed up toward the ridgeline above us. A figure stood there, still, facing down toward our position. Not moving. We called out. No response. By the time we got our binoculars up, the ridge was empty. Denny said it might have been another climber who'd already moved past the ridge and out of sight, or a rock formation catching the light wrong. I noted, quietly, that it had been standing when we first saw it and gone less than 10 seconds later, and there was no cover up there for someone to disappear behind it quickly. We kept climbing. The snow around noon revealed something that stopped all three of us cold, a fresh set of boot prints running parallel to ours, the exact same stride length, exact same tread pattern as my own boots. Not similar. Identical. I checked my own prints against them at the same spot, and they matched down to a worn patch on the left heel that only my boot had, from a repair I'd done myself 2 seasons earlier. Denny suggested someone was following our exact route and happened to own the same boot model, which felt thin even as he said it, but none of us had a better answer. The radio crackled that afternoon with a transmission that wasn't ours, 3 short bursts of static followed by a voice, faint and broken up, saying a name. Not Denny's. Not Priya's. Mine. We checked the frequency. It matched no assigned channel for the area. Denny powered the radio off entirely after that, like turning it off could undo hearing it. By late afternoon, the sun began setting almost an hour earlier than our tables predicted, the light dropping fast, shadows stretching unnaturally quick across the snowfield. Priya checked her watch against Denny's. They matched each other. Neither matched the position of the sun. We made camp early, rattled, deciding to push for the summit at first light instead. That night, I woke to the sound of someone walking slowly around our tent, boots crunching snow in a steady, patient rhythm. I unzipped the flap. Nothing. No prints in the snow immediately around us, though prints continued from roughly 10 feet out, leading away into the dark, matching, again, my own boot pattern exactly. Priya was already awake when I turned around. She'd heard it too. Neither of us mentioned it to Denny in the morning. I think we were both hoping the other had dreamed it. Priya changed after that night. She'd always been the steady one, the planner, but she grew quiet, checking her gear over and over, glancing behind us on the trail more than she looked ahead. At one point she pulled me aside while Denny was checking the map and asked, low enough that he wouldn't hear, whether I'd noticed Denny repeating himself. "Small things," she said. Saying the same sentence twice, word for word, like a recording skipping. I hadn't noticed. Once she pointed it out, I couldn't stop noticing it. On the third day, everything I'd been explaining away stopped being explainable at all. We reached the old fire lookout near the summit by mid-morning, a small wooden structure on stilts, windows boarded from the inside rather than the outside, which struck me as wrong the moment I noticed it. Boarding a window from the inside means you're trying to keep something in, not keep something out. Priya went in first. I heard her stop moving, completely silent, for almost 10 seconds before she called out that it was empty. When I climbed up after her, the interior looked recently occupied, a sleeping bag still warm to the touch, a half-eaten ration bar on the table, a logbook open to a page describing the shape on the ridge, in the same handwriting we'd seen in the ranger cabin 3 weeks earlier. Same handwriting. Same missing person, apparently, who according to that log had been alone up here for over a month. We found no other trace of them. No pack, no ID, no way down. Just a warm sleeping bag in a locked room boarded from the inside, on a peak we'd been told hadn't seen another climber in weeks. Priya found something else tucked behind a loose board near the boarded window, a stack of photographs, old, curling at the edges, showing the lookout from outside at night, a figure standing at the base of the stilts in every single one, closer in each photo than the last. The final photograph in the stack showed the figure standing directly beneath the window, close enough that you could almost make out a face, except where the face should have been, the image was blurred, like something in the air itself had refused to let the camera focus. Denny wanted to keep pushing for the true summit, less than an hour's climb from where we stood. Priya wanted to turn back immediately. I was somewhere in between, terrified but unwilling to abandon a stranger who might still be alive up here somewhere. We compromised, 30 more minutes toward the summit, then straight back down regardless of what we found. That's when the storm hit. Not gradually. Instantly, a wall of white dropping visibility to almost nothing within minutes, though our forecast had promised 2 clear days remaining. We roped together immediately, standard procedure for whiteout conditions, and started working our way back toward the lookout by feel and memory alone. Denny was on the rope ahead of me. I felt 3 sharp tugs, our signal for trouble, and then the rope went slack entirely. I called his name into the white. Priya called his name beside me. There was no answer, no visual, nothing but wind and our own voices swallowed instantly by the snow. We found the rope's cut end minutes later, snapped clean, not frayed, like it had been sliced rather than snapped under strain. Denny was gone. No blood. No sign of a fall. Just an empty length of rope disappearing into white. Then, from somewhere in the storm, we heard him call our names back. Clear. Close. Coming from a direction that made no geographic sense, given where he'd been standing seconds earlier. We didn't follow the voice. I still don't know if that decision saved us or doomed him. We made it back to the lookout by pure instinct, half frozen, unable to see more than a few feet ahead. Inside, we barricaded the door and waited out the storm, taking turns staying awake, listening to something circling the structure outside for hours, footsteps in the snow that never seemed to stop, never seemed to tire, matching a stride that, when I finally worked up the courage to look through a gap in the boards, left prints identical to mine, walking in a slow, endless loop around the building. By morning, the storm broke as suddenly as it had started. We packed what we could and moved, fast, not stopping to search further for Denny, both of us aware that staying any longer might mean neither of us made it down at all. The descent was its own kind of horror. Twice we lost the trail entirely, the terrain shifting subtly from what our GPS and memory both agreed it should look like. Once, an ice bridge we'd crossed safely 2 days earlier collapsed the moment Priya's weight left it, dropping into a crevasse deep enough that we never heard it hit bottom. We rerouted, exhausted, moving on adrenaline more than strength. At one point, Deep in the trees below the tree line, I was certain I heard Denny's voice again, calling out from somewhere off to our left, close enough that Priya heard it too and grabbed my arm before I could turn toward it. "Don't," she said, and that was all. We kept walking straight ahead, not looking, not answering, until the voice faded behind us into the sound of wind through the branches. We reached the trailhead almost 30 hours after the storm began. Search and rescue found no trace of Denny. No body, no gear, no final radio transmission beyond the one none of us had sent. His name is still listed as missing, presumed lost to exposure, a story the report accepts easily because it's the only story that makes sense on paper. I filed my statement exactly as it happened. Investigators changed almost nothing in the official write-up except the parts they couldn't verify, which meant most of it. No mention of the footprints. No mention of the voice. No mention of a rope that was cut, not snapped. Priya stopped climbing entirely after that trip. I still climb, though never anywhere near Korvasi Peak, and never in winter. Search and rescue closed the file on Denny 18 months later, exposure listed as presumed cause, no further action recommended. I still call the ranger station every December, just to ask if anyone's found anything. Every year, the answer is the same. Nothing. No trace. As if the mountain simply decided to keep him. Every year, right after the season's first real snowfall, I find a single set of boot prints outside my house in the morning. My prints, exactly, worn heel patch and all, leading away from my door toward the tree line, and never leading back. I've never followed them to see where they go. I don't think I want to know who's still wearing my boots.